how you can learn to master the book publishing industry and how you can have your dream novel published. We're going to be looking into that, and we're going to be starting right now. As a writer, do you have a dream novel? That one that you've been wanting to write all your life? The one that captures your heart? The one that you want everyone to read? Every writer has that one novel, that one idea that's special to them, that means more than anything. They would love to see that novel published. There's only one problem. You should never submit that novel to a book publishing company or to a literary agent right away. Why? Because they might ask you to make changes. They might ask you to change the ending. They might ask you to change the protagonist, the time setting, or any number of changes. And as a writer, that's your dream novel. That's the one that is so close to you. Now you have to ask yourself, do you want to make changes to your dream novel in order to get it published? Or do you say no and say, I don't want to make those changes? The problem is that if you say no, it may not get published because you're not famous enough in the very beginning to say no to the book publishers. If you say no, well, they'll just kindly show you the door. You're not at a point where you can start demanding things, writing a novel and saying, I don't want this changed. Because book publishers, they spend money on you. They spend a lot of money to get your first book published. And they may not get that money back if your book doesn't sell. Every time book publishers publish a book, they're putting everything on the line. A book publishing company can make a lot of money in the past, but that doesn't guarantee that they're going to be successful in the future. A book publishing company has a lot of employees, people who need paychecks. And the way in which book publishing companies make money is by your book selling. If they sign 4 or 5 new authors and they release 4 or 5 new books and they don't sell, that's money out of their pocket they're not getting back. And it can cause them to go bankrupt. They don't want to go bankrupt. They don't want to have to close their doors and let go of all of their employees. Book publishers need to make money to cover the cost. This has always been the biggest problem with writing your own novel and publishing yourself, is the money for advertising and the cost of mass producing thousands upon thousands of books. When Stephen King wrote the novel Carrie, that was his first ever novel. Today we know Stephen King as the most famous writer in the world, who has sold over 100 million books. But when he wrote Carrie, he was brand new. Nobody knew who he was. He wasn't famous. And they asked him to change the ending to Carrie. He could have said no, and they would have just shown him the door. And we would never know Stephen King to this day. Stephen King said yes to making the changes to the end of Carrie because it wasn't his dream novel. In fact, he didn't even like writing it. He didn't believe in it. So the idea of him having to make changes was fine. He didn't care because he never was connected to that novel to begin with. He made changes and it sold a lot and it became a movie. And he started making more and more novels and became the famous Stephen King we know today. He even wrote a novel called The Stand, which is well over 1,000 pages. But at the time, the book publishers asked him to take 500 pages out. He could have said no, and the book would never have been published because it would have cost a lot of money to print a book over 1,000 pages. They didn't ask him to take that out because they didn't like him. It's just it would have cost so much money to print a book over 1,000 pages. So he took the pages out, but guess what happened? He becomes so famous down the line that he was able to re-release The Stand with those pages put back in. Now that's successful. He eventually wrote the book called It. It had over 1,000 pages, but because he was so famous, they could afford to print that book knowing that it was going to sell. This is a problem with new writers when they submit a novel that is over 1,000 pages. The book publishers can't risk publishing a book that big. Even J.K. Rowling's, when you look at the very last Harry Potter books, they were huge, but the very first ones were very thin and short. They had to be, because they couldn't guarantee that her books were going to sell. But by the time they get to the last ones, everyone knew that no matter what, those Harry Potter books were going to sell. So they could afford to print bigger copies. Now, as a writer, you can use this to your advantage. What you should do is take your dream novel, the one that really means something to you, and put it off to the side. Don't try getting it published right away, which is what a lot of new writers do. They want to have their dream novel published as their first novel. What you should do is write a commercialized book, one that is absolutely commercialized to the full, one that you have no connection to. So that way, when they ask you to make changes, you can say, yeah, no problem. You can make whatever changes you want to your first couple of novels because you have no connection to them. And you commercialize your novel. So by the time those books sell, you then obtain power, because money is power. And that's what it all comes down to. It's money. If you can make the book publishing companies money, then they're going to want you to stay with them. They don't want you going to another publishing house. They want you to stay with them, and they're going to do whatever they can to keep you. And that then works for you, because now you can take your dream novel, and that's the one you submit, and that's the one you want published without making any changes. A good example of this is Clint Eastwood, the actor. Clint Eastwood, whenever he wants to make a movie that has meaning to him, he's willing to play the game, where he will make one movie for the studio if they finance another movie. He wanted to make a movie called Bird, about a jazz player. He agreed to make a Dirty Harry movie in which he would then be given money to make the movie called Bird. He then wanted to make a movie called White Hunter, Black Heart, in which he agreed to make a commercialized movie called The Rookie. In return, he would be given the money and what was needed to make his dream movie called White Hunter, Black Heart. Clint Eastwood knows how to play the game. And as a writer, you should learn this as well. You give the publishing houses what they want, which is a commercialized novel, which is going to make them a lot of money. And in return, you can then write your own dream novel and have that published without it being interrupted or having changes, where you can publish it the way you've written it from start to finish without the fear of having the publishing saying, well, we would like you to change the character, the setting, the time, the ending. This way you have power. And how do you get power? By making other people money, because they're going to come to you because they want you to keep making them money. It's important to remember that no matter how good you think you are at the very beginning, you're not famous. You cannot start making demands. In your head, you might think you're famous. You might think you're the greatest writer of all time, but you have yet to sell a single book. And because you haven't sold a book, they're not going to listen to you. They have countless people coming in every day thinking that they're the greatest writer of all time, demanding things. And the fact is, they're just going to show you the door. But if you learn to play the game and learn to make them money, they're going to come to you. And remember, don't criticize the book publishing company for thinking this way. They have employees to think about. If they finance everyone who comes along with a book, their dream novel, and those novels don't sell, well, the book publishing company is going to lose money. And that's to the boss of the company. They really do have to think about that. Because yeah, you might have a dream novel, but if it doesn't sell and other books don't sell, they lose their money and they have to close their doors. So people say, oh, book publishing companies, all they care about is the money. Well, in a way they have to. Because if you're an independent writer, and you're financing your book all by yourself, you're going to think about the money as well. And people are going to look at you and say, oh, it's not about the money. But if that's coming out of your bank account, you're going to think, yeah, I do have a right to think about the money. Just like how a big publishing house has to think about the money. Because when you walk into a bookstore and you see all those books on the shelves, you got to realize how much money it costs to print just one book and how much it took to transport it, to get it into the stores. So when you walk into a bookstore, there's a lot of money on those shelves. And if those books don't sell, that no matter how big, no matter how successful a book publishing company, they're going to go under. So they really do have to think about the bottom line, because for them, profit is nice, but surviving is more important. And if your book doesn't, if they don't believe in your book, don't take it personally. They're just afraid of unemployment. They're afraid of losing their business. So you shouldn't really criticize them that much. But what you can do is write a commercialized book. So that way it sells, you make them money, they're happy, and they're going to come back to you saying, you got anything else for us? Because that's what they did with Stephen King. Every time his books were selling, they would come back to him saying, you got anything more? And hey, there you go. And then at one point he said, I would like to re-release The Stand, this time with those 500 pages put back in. Now imagine doing that as an author. Imagine writing a book that has 1,000 pages and they want you to take 500 out. And then one day down the road, you have enough power and enough money to say, I would like those 500 pages put back in. And then that book sells just as much as the original did. You're making them money. You're doing well. Your 1,000-page book has been published because you took your time. You didn't throw your weight around. You didn't make demands saying, I want this published or else. Nope. You played the game and you won, because that is what it's about to win at the book publishing industry. It's about learning to play the game. It's like a game of chess. Sometimes you gotta take it slow in order to win down the line. The more you work with them, they want to come back to you. That gives you power. And with that power, then you can get your dream novel published. And if you found this video interesting, well, I know you're going to find my other video interesting on how to be a successful writer. Check out this video right here, right now, and watch it. You will be amazed by it. And be sure to check out my website. I'll leave a link down below for you to check that out. I have a ton of blogs teaching you how to become a successful writer, because I want to help you. I want to see your novel in a bookstore. I want to read your novel. And I want to do everything that I can to help you become a successful writer.